The self-custody workshop with Surfer Jim and BTCSessions. Give it up.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
All right.
Good afternoon.
I like this setup. This is comfy.
Ben and I are going to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And in that conversation, we're going to go through the steps from other people controlling your Bitcoin to you fully controlling it in the safest, most comfortable way that is imaginable. And there is a sliding scale for everybody in this talk, so hopefully you'll see where you fit now and where you want to get to.
Yeah, I think that's always a great way to approach a general talk about custody. Is everybody is going to be somewhere along the line, and maybe not every single part of this talk is for you, but somewhere along the line is going to be very specifically for you. So I want you to listen along as we chat through this and say, that's where I'm at, and then listen really closely to what comes after, because that's going to be the important part for you. So, I mean, first of all, maybe we can start with how many people still have coins sitting with a custodian? All right.
Nobody wants to put their hand up in this crowd. I saw at least two. Good for both of you.
But I mean, that happened. That's still a thing. That's okay, because that's why you're here, right? That's exactly why you're here. So what happens after that? I mean, number one, you don't want it in the hands of a third party because, of course, rug pulls happen. And we have an entire history of Bitcoin where every time something big happens, some disaster where a ton of people lose a bunch of money, the next time it comes around, just before that, the narrative is, we've grown past that. This is we're better than that now. We have better exchanges. We have better custodians, and it's never the case. Mt. Gox 2014. Fast forward to the next cycle. Quadriga, where I'm from in Canada, it was the largest exchange in the entire country. Disappeared overnight. All of the money gone. And then fast forward to the next cycle. This is a regulated exchange. His parents are regulators. He's in front of Congress telling everybody how awesome he is, and he wants to regulate. What happened? FTX blew up. It's going to happen again and again and again. And to paraphrase Matt Odell, it's going to be a cascading series of larger and larger rug pulls until everybody learns the lesson. Do you think so?
Oh, yeah. And what the average person doesn't recognize in this whole discussion is that Bitcoin is perfectly fine the whole time. It just keeps going. It's people scamming on top of Bitcoin or using Bitcoin, and the narrative gets out there in the world that Bitcoin is broken, you can't trust it, whatever. Of course, I would expect most people here would know the difference, but it's kind of up to all of us to certainly know it for ourselves, but help others to understand. Bitcoin has never broken in all the years. The first couple of years, there was a few important tweaks that had to happen, but this network's been self-sustaining for the better part of 15 years now, but the average person has no idea. And it's unfortunate because they get convinced to buy some Bitcoin and they think it's perfectly fine to leave it wherever they bought it. They just don't see that connection, that custody risk. And so obviously the first thing you want to do if you're going to start the process of self-custody is get those coins off an exchange. There are multiple levels of wallets, and we're going to start at the perhaps simplest, but it's always a risk trade-off, something we call a hot wallet. Ben?
So there's some, given the environment we're in right now and kind of where we are in Bitcoin's growth and its scaling, there's now a bit more nuance to what you might do first after deciding it's time to withdraw your coins, which I'd say is, relatively quickly after obtaining some Bitcoin, you want to start learning the ins and outs of self-custody. It used to be the case that you buy some Bitcoin and you just maybe you download a Bitcoin wallet on your phone, a hot wallet, something that's on a device that is connected to the internet, and that your first exposure to that is maybe you bought 20 or 50 bucks and you pull money off into that wallet. It's a little bit different now. And the reason for that, and I'm going to throw some terms there that might seem a little bit scary, but there's something called UTXO management. And I'm going to gloss over a couple of the finer details, but the general idea is the fees when you send Bitcoin transactions have nothing to do with the amount you're sending. It has to do with a few things. Number one, how busy is the network? How many people are trying to transact? Number two, how much data does your transaction require? Data is the scarce resource when it comes to the Bitcoin network. And then number three would be how urgent is your transaction? That's where you actually have the control. I'm going to set my fee high or low on how quickly I want it to go through. But odds are you're not going to be buying $20 and then pulling that into like a hot wallet that is full self-custody, because you're going to get raked over the coals with fees. So there's going to be some nuance there in how you handle that. It might be you let a little bit of a balance build up and then you withdraw, maybe, a few $100, something like that. It's going to be somewhere in that range. Or you might kind of have an in-between. Some people may have a Lightning wallet that's like a custodial wallet, but you prefer that and you withdraw it to that. The other in-between that I've personally been using is so one new wallet that is relatively recent. I kind of like Aqua Wallet, and the reason for that is it uses something called the Liquid network. It is, I will say, this is not. There's trust involved, but there's less trust involved than trusting a single exchange. Liquid is kind of it's Liquid Bitcoin is 1-to-1 with regular Bitcoin. It's basically a bunch of Bitcoin in a big fund that is governed by 15 different entities. In order for them to rug pull you, 11 of them all together would have to collude and then take the Bitcoin. And so why I say that might be a desirable in-between as you build up a balance is 11 entities having to collude and rug pull you versus one. And so on the way to full self-custody, that might be an interim solution that you want to use to build your balance rather than leaving it on the exchange until it builds up. So Aqua Wallet, I think, is a decent solution as you build a balance and then actually fully go to self-custody where you have regular Bitcoin in your own wallet. Some people aren't fans of Liquid. I think it's an okay interim solution. But Aqua Wallet would probably be the mechanism that you do that through. I don't know if you played around with it. Is that new to you?
I haven't used that wallet, but I did want to add a little to this UTXO management. So for anybody who doesn't know what that means, unspent transaction output, we refer to all Bitcoins where they sit now as unspent. We call that a UTXO. And the management of your UTXOs can become important. Anybody who knows what's been going on with the network recently, there's been some very high fees, such to the extent you could want to move $20 and it costs 15 for a fee, and it's economically not worth it. And so what Ben referred to was the idea that even though we don't want to leave our Bitcoin on an exchange in custody with a single entity, it's future planning that you might want to consider here. As Ben pointed out, moving Bitcoin on the network has to do with the size of the transaction in bits and bytes, not in dollars. And if you have a lot of small UTXOs and you want to spend them in the future, they have to get combined, and that creates a larger transaction and probably will require a larger fee to get processed on the network. So when you're thinking about spending your Bitcoin in the future, and I hope everybody is considering that, since it's money and it's meant to store value until it's used in the future, you might want to think, well, what chunks of money might I spend in the future? Many prominent Bitcoiners talk about 1 million sat UTXO, which is somewhere around $600-700 right now. And in the future, that could be worth a lot more. But if you're buying something that's $500 and you have $1,000 UTXO, you're going to leave a a record on the blockchain that a UTXO that started out with $1,000 worth of value, 500 of that got spent, and the other 500 went back as change. And that means that somebody could know how much Bitcoin you have at that one address if they can connect your identity. But what if you started out with an entire Bitcoin? Now they know you've got a much larger change output. And so it works in both directions. You don't want too small of a UTXO, but you may not want too big of a UTXO either. This is going to be personal to everybody, but in terms of self-custody, it's something you should learn to think about and try to plan. It's impossible for any of us to know what we're going to want or need in the future, but the network works a certain way. And to understand how it works and how you can most effectively operate with that network is going to be beneficial when you are using Bitcoin in a self-custody manner, which is what we're leading to.
Yeah. So I love what you said there, that on both sides of the spectrum it matters. To kind of give you a general summary of how to think of this is because Bitcoin fees have to do with data, you could think of it like if every bill that you spend is a little, like in physical cash, is a little bit of data, it makes a lot more sense in terms of fees to spend a $20 bill instead of 20 individual $1 bills, because each bill has a little fee attached. So the 20 is going to be cheaper to spend. But on the polar opposite end of the spectrum, imagine walking into a physical shop and buying a t-shirt for $20. If you pull out a 50, the merchant sees your $30 and change. No big deal. If you pull out $1 million bill, and maybe in the context of an online shop, that merchant sees the $999,000 of change going back to you and now has your address where they're shipping the t-shirt. That might be worth a plane ticket to them. So, you know, you're trying to walk that tightrope and kind of find the size of bills that are both economically viable, but also don't dox your entire life savings to every person that you go and spend at. So it's like you said, it's going to be different for everybody. But in general, the idea is you, in some way, shape, or form, build a bit of a balance, withdraw to your own wallet. And this is going to be a hot wallet, maybe initially, as you learn and test for the first time. So maybe it's a few $100. You're downloading a wallet on your phone to learn how to set it up. You're going to have 12 or 24 words to write down. And it's nice to practice deleting that wallet, downloading
Ben does
it again.
a great workshop, explains the whole thing. Anybody has a chance, I used it for refresher course for myself back in the fall in Santa Monica. I took his cold card session and we walked through the whole thing, set up the wallet, transferred funds on chain. We literally did real transactions, wiped out the wallet, put the seed phrase back in. The Bitcoin was still there. We all saw it happen. My friend Trish is here. She was in that workshop. Hi, Trish. It was a great workshop. Ben's an expert at this stuff. So anybody who wants a real professional tutorial, this is the man to give it to you.
I was so happy when I saw Jim walk into that workshop. It was a lot of fun. And he was helping teach everybody in the room. So it was great. So we're chatting about hot wallets, obviously. So a hot wallet is simply a wallet where the keys to your money, because that's what a wallet is, it doesn't hold your money. The money is on the Bitcoin blockchain, giant ledger of who owns what. You own keys to your money. That's what a wallet is. So you can, I always use this metaphor, and I quite like it, but imagine that there was a giant set of safety deposit boxes in the sky. You can look up and you see all these different boxes. They're all transparent. And you can see inside of these boxes all money that exists. Every bill that exists is all in these safety deposit boxes in the sky. Each box has a little slot where you can slide in cash anywhere. But in order to open a box and take cash out, you need the key. That's your wallet. Your wallet is just one of those keys. You can reach up, you can unlock the boxes that you own, open them up, take out whatever cash you want. You can slide it into any other box, but once it's in there, if you don't have the key, there's no take backsies. It's gone. So like this is effectively what your wallet, and so when we say hot wallet, we mean that your key to your money It's hot because it's on a device connected to the internet, and it's only as secure as that device. That might be a phone or a computer, but if that device is compromised, somebody might be able to make a copy of your key, just like if somebody made a copy of your house key, they can access the contents of your house. Here, they can access the contents of your Bitcoin wallet, which is why we might want... I'll pass it to Jim.
Well, a cold wallet is the next step, right? We talk about a wallet as a cold wallet, which is one where the private key is not online when you're using it. And there's a ton of excellent wallets out there that you can use. And we could go into each individual wallet. There's probably too many of them, but generically, I would say you have a wallet that needs to be connected to send a transaction, and then one that does not, which would be a air gapped, where your private keys are somewhere completely outside the transaction that gets created. You send the transaction to the wallet for signature and then back to some software to broadcast it. And so the keys never get anywhere near the internet. It's a little more complicated. For anybody who knows, I'm referring to a cold card wallet. There are plenty of other cold wallets that don't use air gap. And so for a moment, your wallet is plugged in. It's talking to the network. If you're using your own node, you're transacting through that, and you're not asking anybody else for any information about the status of the network. And so there's a lot of gray areas in this, but essentially you want to get to the point where you control your own key and it's not online all the time, right? So that's the next step, is a cold wallet. Of course, we recommend everybody at least get to that point. Some people go right from exchange right to a cold wallet if they happen to know somebody that can help them. And so essentially, we say this word private key. It's a really long number. And with public-private key encryption, you have this ability to give somebody a key that is connected to your private key, known as a public key. And that is the box that he's talking about. Anybody can send Bitcoin to that box because you've given them the address of where it is. But they can't take it back out because they don't have the private key, only you do. So this private key is potentially extremely valuable. Like anybody who knows, who's been around, many of you people know exactly what I'm going to say. You want to back that up in a way that you'll never lose that key. Through some really smart people, we were able to take, not me, of course, but very smart developers were able to take that really long number and turn it into a series of words so that you can memorize it if you want. But you can also write them down, and there are products out there where you can stamp them into metal. So if your house burns down, you could find it in the ashes. But understand, that key is just information, and it can be owned by anybody. And so you never want somebody else to see it or be able to find it, or they can have your Bitcoin. And so protection of that private key, those words or that big number, is critical, whether it's a hot wallet or a cold wallet. It's super critical to recognize the extreme importance of protecting that private key, regardless of the wallet. I'll let you continue with, if you want to talk about specific wallets or techniques for using them.
Yeah. So we're in the realm of cold wallets. It's something where the key to your money is explicitly put in a device that does not directly connect to the internet. Even the ones that you do plug into your computer are typically designed in a way where the key information, the words or the long number that represents the keys to your money, they're not shared to the computer. What's actually happening is, you say on your computer or maybe your phone, depending on what you're using, you say on one of those internet-connected devices, you say, I would like to send this amount of Bitcoin to this address. And you kind of set it up on your device. And then your online device communicates either through a cable or a QR code or an SD card. It communicates to your cold wallet and says, hey, somebody wants to send this amount of Bitcoin to this address. Will you give a signature? So think of a credit card signature. Will you sign off on this? And you then, with your device, say yes or no. If you say yes, it then gives that signature back to your phone or your computer so that you can then broadcast it to the network and say, this transaction is approved. Money is on the move. And that's what you're doing with your device. And so there's a lot of different ways you can do that. There's a lot of different device options you can do that with. But the key lesson is your keys are offline. They're able to approve a transaction and give that approval back to something that can connect to the internet. So some devices out there have, where should I start here? I'm going to say some devices out there are what's known as open source. That means anybody that wants to and has the skill to can go and check that the code is doing what it says it's doing, that the device and the software and all of that is doing what it claims to do. And there's no malicious bits trying to take your key material and send it out to somebody remotely. Open source is important. You should have eyeballs making sure that your device is doing what it claims to do. That's one thing. That's something that you might want to be looking at or be interested in when you're choosing. Number two, and this could be make or break for some people. Some devices have what's called a secure element, basically a little computer chip where the keys to your money are secured. And the idea is if somebody gets a hold of your device and tries to, plug it in or do something fancy to it and to extract your key material, it becomes, I don't want to say necessarily impossible, but incredibly, incredibly difficult to do. And so some devices have secure elements in them. And then the final preference would be, maybe not the final, but one of the other ones would be, do you want a device that you plug in directly to something connected to the internet? So is your device, have a USB cable? And the trade-off there, I guess, would be the software where you're choosing where you want to send your Bitcoin can then directly communicate with the device and prompt it to act. So you say on your computer, I want to send this and I want to approve it. And it will, through the USB cable, prompt your device to do something and say, do you approve this? If you don't like that, an air-gapped wallet would be where there's no direct connection, there's no cable. Your device cannot be prompted. You need to manually take that information via an SD card or a QR code or something and get it to the device and then tell the device, hey, I'm doing a transaction. It's time to do this now, without having a degree of control over it. That's kind of my read on air-gapped.
So let me say the same thing in a different way. Essentially, you're going to need your hardware wallet. Many people call it what it essentially is. It's a signing device. It's not a wallet. It doesn't hold your Bitcoin. Your Bitcoin is always on the network. Every node has a copy of your Bitcoin. They just can't move it. So the signing device, your wallet, is what tells the independent nodes of the network whether or not your request for a transaction is legitimate. The way the Bitcoin network works is that nobody wants to trust anybody. So everything about transactions and propagation can be verified by every single node. So you're not asking permission, but you're also not given any leeway on this. If your transaction does not fit the protocol, your Bitcoin doesn't move. So with an air-gapped wallet, what you're doing is you're saying to the network, I've got this Bitcoin at this address. I control it. I have a private key and I can prove it. You build that transaction in some software. Sparrow is a popular one. It's the one I use. It's the one Ben used in his session that we did in California. And it's real simple to use. But that software is building the transaction, but it cannot sign. The signing device has the key and it's not plugged in. So you take that transaction, put it on an SD card, put it into the signing device and simply sign it, and then put it back and broadcast it. So your keys never got anywhere near the internet. So something like a Trezor, the keys are inside the device, and when you go to send the transaction, you have to plug it in. So there's a small period of time where if some crazy malicious software can tell your wallet to send some to another address you didn't approve, you're going to lose your funds. Now that's I've never heard of that happening, but we think about everything as a potential risk. And if it's a way to mitigate it, that's what you should consider doing. And so the air gap nature of a hardware wallet is just one step towards more safety, that you're not going to get rugged by, some malicious device or some malicious software, and you are in full control of your Bitcoin at that stage. But understand that signing device and that private key is just as important as any other private key, and it still requires incredible protection, because if anybody gets a copy of it, they can go set up their own wallet and move your funds out. And so the management of the key becomes the most critical thing in self-custody. No matter what level you're doing it, managing that key is the most important thing.
So maybe, because we're going to go a little bit deeper on things in a few minutes, but I just want to take a few minutes to mention some devices that this might pertain to, ones that I've used in the past, things that I think are interesting. I'm personally a big cold card fan. I really do like the cold card. It looks like a little calculator. The new one looks like a BlackBerry. I guess they just like the past, but it's kind of cypherpunk. I think it looks cool. But I really like those devices. But there's plenty of other things out there. You mentioned the Trezor. Now, so cold card has a secure element, or two secure elements in it. Trezor, the older versions of the device do not have a secure element. The new one, the Trezor Safe 3, does now have a secure element. So that's, for me, I quite liked that they added that. There's also the Seed Signer, which is like entirely stateless, meaning that it doesn't actually retain the information. Your private key is actually a little QR code that you would keep safe. And in order to use it, you would scan the QR code to temporarily put your key on the device to be able to use it. So it's a little bit, I'd say, even more cypherpunk, and there's trade-offs in that, but I think it's a cool project. I don't know. Do you have the other one I'll mention that I think is kind of useful in the context of cheaper. There's trade-offs for sure, but also convenience. And I think sometimes for travel, it could be useful as the Tap Signer, because it's literally like, it looks like a credit card. It's NFC. And what it does is, if you're on the move, you have Bitcoin in your phone that you perceive to be more than you would be comfortable with carrying as cash. What this does is you'd effectively have a wallet interface on your phone, an app like Nunchuck Wallet. You would say, I want to spend this Bitcoin to this address. It then says, put in the PIN for your Tap Signer. So you do that. That PIN then allows you to take your card and simply tap it to your phone and sign the transaction. So it adds a layer of security to what it would have just been a phone wallet. And now it requires a PIN and a device tapped to your phone in order to successfully send. So if somebody were to get your device, they don't really have anything because they need the PIN. If somebody gets your phone, they still actually don't have anything because they require the PIN and the device. So it's just, again, different use case, but something that I think is cool. Are there other ones that you enjoy?
No, you have way more experience than I with lots of different wallets. I've mostly used Trezor, Cold Card. I had a little experience with a Ledger many years ago before I became uncomfortable with the company for various reasons.
Fair.
I have a Jade at home. It's still in the box.
Yeah.
And somebody gave me a Tap Signer at one of the conferences recently, and I still haven't used it. It's like I got a busy life. There's a lot of stuff, and it constantly changes, folks. So don't trust verify always, and do your homework. Like Ben said, open source is better. There's people looking at things that can verify that your thing is not going to steal your funds. So there's a lot going on, and it's constantly changing. So I wouldn't recommend trying to keep up with it all. Get comfortable with one or two devices, even just one, and then you can move on and decide how you want to secure funds. Many people have multiple wallets, and so they're not keeping all their Bitcoin on one wallet. That's one of the things I do, but it's going to be personal to each person. most important thing, don't mess up the key, the private key. That's the big takeaway here.
Yeah, you want to be safe with that. Your words are sacred. Keep them keep them away from prying eyes. Don't take pictures of them. Don't put them in the cloud. Don't, have a digital copy of them somewhere. You want those keys offline, put away, safe, away from prying eyes. That's kind of the main thing that you want to be concerned with. Are you cool to? I think it's time to
transition. Let's get really complicated, folks. All right. Full disclosure: I work with the Bitcoin advisor that's based out of Australia, and our specialty is helping people get their coins off exchanges and creating a collaborative custody multi-sig setup. So let me explain that really quick. Multi-sig simply means multi-signature. So when you're signing a transaction with a single signature wallet, you need one signature, and you have one private key. And many of us, I'm sure in this room, control our Bitcoin that way. It's what I've done for many years, never felt that it was at any risk. Then I met Peter Dunworth, who explained to me the problem that we are attempting to solve here, which is, what if I mess up? For many of the people in this audience, you've heard of multi-sig, where you have multiple wallets that... So let me back up for a second and say that the Bitcoin protocol will allow for certain things and not other things. In the protocol layer, it allows for a wallet or an address that Bitcoin can be sent to, that in order to take it back out, you need more than one signature. And how you set it up determines how many signatures you need to spend those funds. So the typical multi-sig is a 2 out of 3. There are 3 keys used to set up the receive address for the Bitcoin, and 2 of those are needed to sign a transaction. Any 2, but you're setting it up that way in advance. It could be 3 of 5, 7 of 10. Once it's set up, the protocol will not allow for that Bitcoin to move unless those rules that you set up in advance are satisfied. Why would you want this? Well, what we're seeing now with the value of Bitcoin going up is people are concerned with that private key. They recognize they are a single point of failure out there in the world. And a lot of these people are very concerned that their family would have no idea what to do if they got in a car accident and were not there the next day. And so multi-sig protects that in a way that the owner of the Bitcoin can always say, hey, I want to send some Bitcoin somewhere. I want to sign a transaction. He calls up whoever has the other keys and says, hey, we need to come together and sign a transaction. That's great if you know how to operate with Bitcoin, but many people's families do not. And unfortunately, I don't love the subject, but we're all going to take our last breath. And many people are concerned about their Bitcoin passing to the people they love. So I want to ask 2 questions of this group. How many of you recognize the idea and are thinking about multi-generational wealth here? A lot of hands just went up. Well, what does that mean? That means your Bitcoin is going to pass to another person someday, doesn't it? For all of those people who like the idea of generational wealth, how many of you people, and you don't have to dox yourself here, how many of you people have a proper will, trust, power of attorney, and healthcare proxy all coordinated with your Bitcoin? Wait, no hands went up? Oh, I saw one, maybe. I had a feeling this was the response I would get. And that's why every one of you is not protected. Your Bitcoin is not protected. Your family may never get it. Because you know what? If you don't have a will, who determines who gets your stuff? The government. Our friends. No. You do not want to go to probate court. You do not want your family fighting to get the Bitcoin they deserve. So that's where we come in. Essentially, the value we bring to this discussion is that we will work with you to set up the multi-sig. We will hold one of the keys for you, but we will make sure, we will be relentless about making sure you get a will, a trust, power of attorney, healthcare proxy in case you're in a coma, somebody to make medical decisions for you, and an administrator of your estate that will make sure the Bitcoin gets to where it has to get to. And that is maybe not going to happen for a lot of people in this room if you don't take some steps to set your estate plan in motion as soon as you get back from this trip. Contact an attorney and get the process started. And what we provide to your attorney, we have attorneys, we talk to your attorney, we will provide you with technical information about the exact Bitcoin you own. When the multi-sig is created, there's something called a wallet configuration file, which is very technical information. We put that in a estate planning protocol document that your attorney can integrate with your will and trust and your personal estate plan. And what this does, if you think about settling an estate, the state can be involved, but other people in the real world are definitely involved. People that are going to have to physically move that Bitcoin one day. So as a key agent holding a key for somebody, if we don't know who the heirs are, we're going to actually have to require some legal documents, death certificates, information about who the rightful heirs are of this Bitcoin. And we are only going to sign a transaction that we're comfortable it's going to the person, our client, who set it up and wants it to go in that direction. So that's why we're relentless about making sure that you finally get your will and your trust done so that we know it's out there. And if somebody presents it to us, we'll have a record that this all got done. And we will be there to make sure your wishes are carried out. We will not sign a transaction if we think that Bitcoin's not going where you want it to go. We're going to work with your attorney, your estate administrator, and we're going to make sure the Bitcoin goes where it has to go. So we believe that this is critical because here's the problem. Not all families get along. You could have several kids. You could appoint your oldest as the estate administrator. He might not like his younger brother, and he might not want to give up some Bitcoin because he's got the key, right? So since he has to sign with somebody else, we can look at the document and say, sorry, little brother, we're not sending it all to you. The document over here says your brother gets some and your sister gets some. And so as fiduciaries, we have a responsibility, just like an attorney, to carry out the wishes of the client based on legality in the real world. And you can get a court order from a judge that says, make sure that Bitcoin goes to that person. But whoever controls the key doesn't have to do it. They can go to jail or die and never get the Bitcoin moved. And so coordinating Bitcoin, which is, so like a court order comes down and says, move the Bitcoin. The network doesn't care. The network is not going to move the Bitcoin. A physical person has to sign a transaction and it's got to get to another wallet somewhere. And the state can attempt to force whatever they want, but the protocol doesn't give a crap. And so if you don't start thinking this stuff through, folks, all you folks with Bitcoin and care about generational wealth, you got some work to do. I'm sorry. And I'm happy to help. That's what we're in business for. But this is the next level of self-custody, because now you've got the ability to move your Bitcoin anytime you want. I like to think of it as customer service backup. We're happy to help you set it up. We give away the information free on our website. You can read how to do it yourself and spend the next several hundred to 1,000 hours getting it right. Or you could just say, hey, help me out. And there's a lot of people out there that they don't want to learn this stuff, and they're perfectly happy to hire a company like us. The point is, we're all in the same boat, folks. You all have this problem. And fix it yourself or let us help you fix it. But you need to fix it. So I suggest everybody learn what this is about. Get your coins off exchange. If you have to go to a hot wallet first, fine. It's better than leaving it on exchange. Definitely want to get it in a cold wallet. And once that value starts going up, and I suggest everybody consider their Bitcoin worth millions right now. And so you already need to protect it. And this is why this industry is growing, because Bitcoin keeps getting more valuable. And people are starting to go, man, there's a lot at risk here. And so thankfully, the protocol allows this, literally in the code. And we're just taking advantage of it. And we're bringing it to another level and making sure it's coordinated with the real world out here. So I've said enough about what we do at the Bitcoin Advisor, but I just want to encourage everybody. It may sound complicated. We walk you through the whole thing. It's not actually that hard. You can do it yourself. You can already have one and come to us and say, I like the idea of you holding one of my keys. Because if you set it up yourself, who are you giving the other two keys to? Your Uncle Bill? Your friend from high school? What do they know? Maybe they won't act the way you want them to act later on. But a licensed business that's based around Bitcoin that not only knows what to do, but cares about our reputation and our clients, we're going to make sure it goes where the owner of the Bitcoin wanted it to go based on the legality of the jurisdiction you're in and whether or not you're dealing with courts or anybody else in that manner. So I said a lot there. Whatever you want to add to that, I know you understand this stuff.
Couple things. So number one, never trust Uncle Bill. Only trust Uncle Jim. Right. So that's one. But no. But you were talking about risk, and so I like to think of when trying to handle Bitcoin, what risks am I trying to hedge against? And so I typically kind of come to two general buckets of risk. One is my own errors or my family's errors, and this is where like an assisted multisig comes into play. So something like that, it's why is that attractive? It's kind of like, well, how much can go wrong and you still be okay? In a 2 of 3 multisig, you've got what do you and your family have? You've typically got 2 devices and a backup of each. So you've got 4 things. How much stuff could you lose and not be screwed? And the answer is 75% of all your stuff you can lose and still not be screwed. So you need to have a key or a backup of one of the keys, and then you can go to the assisted company, whether it be Bitcoin Advisor or whoever, but you can go and say like, hey, I may have lost a couple things, but you've got 1 key left, and they can be the other key to unlock that vault because you need 2 keys to do it. And so that's where the assisted multisig becomes attractive. Now, there's other buckets of risk that I also sometimes consider. And so this would be the government is still moderately rational and is going to let you keep your coins. But obviously, Bitcoiners rightfully sometimes like to wear tinfoil hats. I know that I've worn mine from time to time. And so there's also, and how you weight them might be different, but there's the top-down coercion of a government saying, 6102 time, hand over those coins. And so there's a couple things you can do. Number one, you're not out of luck necessarily if you're using an assisted multisig. Why? You mentioned the configuration file. That's an important thing. What's the configuration file? That is basically the map to your digital vault. Now, if you didn't have your configuration file, it's kind of like having keys to a digital vault, but you don't know how to get there. Even though you've got 2 keys, you're kind of screwed if they turn off the lights over at your assisted multisig. But if you have the configuration file, which you guys give to people, right? Absolutely. Then you can take that file, you can load it into Sparrow Wallet or whatever you want, and you can see the vaults on your own computer, and you can move money unilaterally without the permission of them, without ever having to go through their interface, whatever it is. You can do it by yourself. So you're not screwed there. The trade-off is, there's a company that is aware of the balance, but they can never take it from you. So, in the government top-down nightmare scenario, maybe they go to collaborative custody and say like, who has an account? But they still can't just rug it from you. Now, if you're wearing your tinfoil hat and you're like, maybe I want a portion in a little nest egg that nobody knows about, this is where you start going down the route of, I want to obtain Bitcoin in a way where nobody knows I have it, or some of my Bitcoin where nobody knows I have it, and I want to hold it in a way, whether it be single sig or multi-sig, where it stays separate from my collaborative stack that is hedging against human error. This stack is hedging against government tyranny. So maybe you have a little bit, and then how you tip that scale is dependent on the size of your tinfoil hat. So
I want to add something I forgot to mention. I said more than once how important it is to protect the private key. But oddly enough, in a multi-sig, you can leave it right on the kitchen counter. You can give it away to anybody you want. They can't get your Bitcoin without another key. And because we have our main offices in Australia, we work a lot with Unchained, who's here in America. We have clients in Europe. You can have 3 keys on 3 different continents, and that definitely protects you from government overreach and court orders saying, give us your money. And it's like, sorry, we can't. The protocol doesn't recognize your court order, and the keys are thousands of miles away. Sorry. And thankfully, governments collude and cooperate all the time, but how much are they trying to extort from you to get your keys to get a couple Bitcoin you might have? it just reduces the risk dramatically. And what's also good is we make multiple backups of everybody's keys, and we then send them out to different continents. So our one key is already backed up multiple times. And like I said, anybody could see it. It's irrelevant. But we know we're never going to lose ours because we already have multiple. And we suggest everybody make a copy of your private key. Give it to your wife. Give it to your kids. It doesn't matter. They can't spend your Bitcoin. But it makes it so much less critical to hide that private key and protect it, especially if you just outright lose it. We're not going to lose it. Unchained's not going to lose it. Nunchuck's not going to lose it. Casa's not going to lose it. We're multi-sig agnostic. We don't care who builds the multi-sig. We're a key agent. We're going to hold a key for you, and we're going to help make sure it's coordinated with your state plan.
Yeah.
That's what we bring to the table here. But in general, folks, look into this. For everybody, it's going to be different. We started out talking about this. This is a sliding scale of trust and complicated, procedures, however you want to look at it. And we're all going to fall at a different point on that spectrum. And our goal here was to sort of give you the big overview. And everybody should be able to identify where they are in that. Like Ben said in the beginning, we all are somewhere on that path. And wherever you are, if you think you need to move forward, start doing your homework, and you can DM either one of us. We're happy to help you. We're both of that opinion. I know Ben is. We want to help. We really I love when people ask me questions and I enlighten them and they go, "Whoa, that's what that is." I feel like it just made my day. I was out in the pool doing an interview with Luke Broyles, and two people were watching, a father and son, watched for like an hour and a half. And as I started to walk away, the kid comes up and says, "How does Bitcoin work?" And then I spent another 15 minutes telling him and his dad. And it pretty much made my day in a weird way, because these are just two total strangers, but I got them thinking, and they were getting it. Oh, and that's how I scraped my leg. The coral got me. Anyway, we're out of time, and I don't want to go too far over. Ben, close us out here. I just want to say thank you for everybody that showed up. It's very nice of you to come and listen to us.
Awesome. I guess to round it out, all I'll say is we covered a lot of stuff there. I don't want you to try and ingest the entirety of that. I want you to focus on where are you now and what was the part that came after. Focus on that single thing. Take baby steps one at a time, but don't get analysis paralysis. Don't stand in place. Just take the next step. Don't look at where you need to be a year, 2 years, 5 years from now. Look at where you are and just move incrementally, and you will be golden as long as you keep on learning. So we'll leave it there. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, folks.